What's going on, guys? Welcome to In the Zone. I'm your host, Garrison Roy, and today we're going to go into a little bit of a rant on a couple topics of how you can stay in the zone. If you're new to the podcast, we're going to have different types of shows within the show, but if you're not new to the podcast, this intro might be a little bit different for you, right? So, before we've had rants, we've had full-length interviews, mental minutes, and deep dive educational explorations. I'm still going to have a lot of those. But the overall general theme, most of it has been through baseball performance and baseball coaching. But I think I'm going to broaden this out for the podcast in general to be over just general human performance on how people can stay mentally in the zone, whether it is they're playing sports, right? Because human performance is what's going to correlate to playing performance or performance in the classroom, performance on the field, coaching performance, performance within whatever it is that you're putting towards in your life, whether it's your career or maybe putting together a business, right? Those things are all about performance, right? And that's what is kind of essentially pushing the needle in a lot of different sectors and different sports and different industries, right? So again, still going to be in the zone, still going to have a lot of baseball themed content because it's mostly my background. But again, kind of broadening the horizons there a little bit. But if you guys are interested in anything that you want to see covered, maybe it's something that you listen to a different podcast, a Joe Rogan Experience, or maybe even, some uh, Instagram Reels or TikTok Reels that you've kind of came across and you want to expand on it, or maybe kind of see if this is real or not. See if this is actually something that's legitimate, or if this is all just kind of charlatan people trying to make some clickbait and things like that, right? So please share the show and please text below if you have anything that you want us to cover on this podcast. But for this one, gonna go ahead and dive deep into pre-game, pre-practice, or just rituals. You have routines. So for the normal person, you have a daily morning routine, or for pre-games, all the players usually have their same type of routines that they would go through pre-game or pre-practice, right? And then you have some superstitions that obviously a lot of baseball guys are known for. And then from those superstitions, they can turn into a little bit on the weary side of OCD. And I wanted to share you guys a clip that if you were watching any of the games recently of the NFL with the Commanders and the Bucks, right? Game went down to the wire. It was 2020 in the fourth quarter. Winner goes to, the next round in the playoffs. But I wanted to go ahead and share that with you guys real quick and see if I can get this to open. All right. So notice what he does with his hair. The sixth is Gonzalez. The first time he's kicking in the NFL since 2021. He's got 6 games for Washington, and he's got a chance to get the Commanders playoff win. I counted roughly 18 to 20, and he tried to put on his helmet twice. Right. So again, that right there is an extreme of what we would call probably an OCD or maybe a superstition. And he's open about struggling with OCD, the kicker there for the Commanders, where he has to have his socks on perfectly whenever he puts his cleats on, which again, I totally get it. You kind of have to have some comfortability because it does kind of get to you a little bit there. But knowing the differences between these, and I wanted to kind of define these a little bit more for you guys so that you can kind of have a little bit more clear definition of them and find out what is a routine, what might be a superstition that could be harmless or harmful, and then what also could be getting into, a little bit more OCD type tendencies, right? So with the benefits of these, right? Having some consistency and preparation through routines, right? Even a morning routine, you wake up, drink water as soon as you get up, or a big popular one now is like, hey, I'm gonna go do a cold shower or an ice bath or sauna, right? You got all these little gimmicks that you could do in the morning. A newer one now is the 30 30 30. Within 30 minutes of waking up, you have 30 grams of protein and 30 minutes of cardio, which I think is great, gets people moving and keeps people out of eating sugar a lot. So regardless of whatever your routines are that you're adapting, right? You got to memorize that maybe the first couple weeks. Make sure that you have maybe a checklist where you're like, okay, I did this, I did this. But then after the fact, it just becomes a habit, right? You heard the 21 days till a habit. I've also posted and had podcasts on 75 hard, where that's literally becomes a part of your life at that point, and why I continue to drink a gallon of water a day, because that habit was instilled in me through those routines and what those little critical tasks that you had to check off each day, right? So there's routines through that, right? Or think of an athlete where they're going in, they're going to go through, they're going to maybe as a hitter, they're going to go do some work off the tee, then they're going to do some front toss, and then they're going to do some overhand work, then they're going to go to their actual BP. Or as a pitcher, be like, hey, I'm going to do my bands, or I'm going to do my warm up routine, I'm going to do my light catch or my long toss, then I go to the bullpen, and then the pre-pitch bullpen, you have a specific routine of what you're trying to do. And again, sometimes that can be tinkered with, right? So routines, I think, and a big differentiator is routines can be uh, interchangeable or adjusted. The superstitions or the OCD stuff are things that have to be exact or perfect. And the OCD in particular is very, very rooted in fear of, hey, if I don't do this one thing right, then this is going to go completely wrong. Right. And if any of you guys are fans of any sports, especially early 2000s baseball, you've seen guys where, or really even before that, right? You've had superstitions pretty much all throughout the game. And you have guys where they have to tug their hat a certain amount of times or restrap their batting gloves. And David Ortiz was big on that, had to spit in his batting gloves, restrap them, right? And all these things, again, are just more of ticks and ways to help them get in the zone, right? Help them stay locked in. It could be a playlist that you listen to, right? Um, it could be a pre-game meal, right? Those are other ways that could be a little bit beneficial, right? Or taking a deep breath. I've talked about this before of having an anchor before a pitch, right? Or even basketball player before a free throw, clapping your hands, staying energized, or you just myelinate that in, and that's helping you reinforce that good positive emotion to a specific action, right? But the unhealthy ones, right? These are the ones where you need to step up to the plate a certain way, or someone has to hand you the bat, or maybe your everything has to be set up perfectly. I had a teammate, Landon Steiner, shout out to you if you're listening to this. He had to have his bat, his gloves, his helmet, and his his whole bag set up on the bench in one particular way. Again, whenever we changed places, he had to still have that kind of setup in there. But hey, it worked for him. He knew where all his stuff was. So I think that kind of veered on the little bit of the healthy side, but also could have been taken a little too far. He obviously wasn't too much of a dick about it, but when someone touched his stuff and he didn't know where it was, like he moved, the bat was moved and he couldn't come in, in between innings and know where all of his stuff was so that he could not have to panic and look around in the dugout, which I think is huge. If you know where your stuff is at and you're ready to rock and roll, then you can go get on deck or next up, and you don't have to be all spastic and all over the place, right? But there's also ways where that could be like obsessively worrying about small things where it's like, hey, I have to have this. My water has to be done at a specific time. Or, there's one pitcher out there, I'll refrain from saying his name, but he's a softy vet, still plays today, and he had to sit at the very end of the dugout. And if anyone came close to him at the end of the dugout, any rookies or new guys or press or anything like that, he would just straight up like give him a death stare and be like, dude, you gotta move. Right? Because he was trying to get himself in the zone and kind of be spaced out or away from other people. And again, whenever it kind of toes that line where you can't literally function without that, I think that's where things can kind of get to um, the wayside, right? Other types of rituals that I think are healthy, right? Maybe going and looking at film after or stats, but also with that too, you can also obsess over a certain film or looking over things. And again, leans a little bit more towards the OCD side. We're like, hey, if my mechanics don't look exactly like this whenever I threw 95 or 100 or whatever, then I'm not going to be able to perform at that. And again, what's the root of all of that? It's the fear-based motivation from them saying, oh, if I don't do this, then I will perform bad. Or if this doesn't happen, then I will perform poorly. It's not necessarily true. You're just trying to get yourself in the best position possible to be able to perform at your best, to stay locked in, stay in the zone, right? It could be something, the healthy ones is a snack, journaling or writing, or maybe you cool down, maybe you're doing some visualization, you put your earphones in, maybe you take a little quick nap, maybe do some little light stretching or do a couple routines. But the biggest thing is you got to know how to adapt based on your environment, especially in a sports world. Let's say a pitcher loves to do his routine before things, but hey, there's nowhere to do a plyos. There's no wall. There's no way to hook up your bands because you're playing on an old school field. I actually had this happen to myself where all the outside fencing was that old school 1980s baseball stadium, and it was all, you know, all the old advertisement walls, right? So there was no chain link fences anywhere except for right in front of the dugout, right? So I had to find a way to do that and then finagle kind of my routine through there. But even then, I couldn't do that in the middle of the game. If that was the only place to do it, I had to go back into the bullpen. I still had to finagle it and find out ways to still get myself warm, right? But you got to really ask yourself these couple questions. If you want to know if it's a routine or ritual or superstition, superstitions are a little bit out there, and I'll kind of touch on that a little bit. But the main thing is, does this action or habit or whatever it is make me feel prepared and focused? Does it give you confidence? Does it give you something to where you're like, hey, yeah, I'm ready to rock and roll? I feel centered. I don't feel spastic, right? So think of all the other different types of adjectives. Nervous, right? All over the place. Could be your brain is rolling all over the place too. That I think would be more of a ritual and a routine. But the second question would be, does this action cause anxiety if not done perfectly, right? Where you're venturing down the perfectionism side. And I've gone around through this too, and I'll tell you guys a story about that here in a second. But that is where I think that kind of falls into a little bit more of a compulsion, where it's fear-based, and if you don't do it correctly, then all hell breaks loose pretty much. And I kind of stumbled across one myself indirectly. It was my freshman year in high school. I was on the varsity team. We were playing in the regional game, first round, and playing first base. Guy up there on the mound wasn't doing so hot. He's given up a few runs. And in the middle of the first inning, yeah, we were up like, or down like 7-0 or something like that. Had to go in. I didn't have my routine that I was used to, right? So I went in, got some quick outs, and I think I maybe walked a guy or there because I was still warming up straight from first base. My only warm ups were the little flips that you give second, shortstop, and third, right? So my arm wasn't completely cold, but I was still not having any of my off speed ready to rock and roll. And they only give you 8 or so pitches, especially right when you're trying to make a transition in between the game. So, with me being that two-way guy, I went in. And then after I got that in the first inning, I got those 3 outs. I wasn't up to bat right away. So, what I did was I went and did some towel drills and some Hershiser drills. Again, don't crucify me for those, but that's just what I did back in 2009. That was cutting edge back then. Um, but again, that was me going through that routine. And as soon as I did that, went out, lights out that inning. Our team started to come back, make a little bit of a rally the following inning. I hit a homer, right? We're starting to make a little bit more progress and chipping away. It was like 5-7 now. And so in between each inning, no matter what happened, unless I was in the hole or on deck, I went and did the towel drill, went, did the Hershiser drill. Did that kind of give me a little bit more of maybe a solidified routine. It was like, hey, this is helping me stay locked in the zone. And probably the most way I could recollect of being locked in and just so zoned in, tuning out everyone around me that I've ever been. I could still see things and hear things. I could hear the chirps from the other dugout, but I wasn't really registering. I could hear it, but was just so zoned in, laser focused, like as if I had tunnel vision. It was awesome. I absolutely loved that feeling. Major influence of this podcast was through that experience, or that the name of being in the zone is that right there. Is very, very addicting. So I thought, because I was doing that between each innings, that that's what was going to help me get locked in. But it wasn't necessarily true. It was really more the time crunch of being, oh, hey, you got to be ready to rock and roll now, no matter what, right? And if I wasn't ready to be locked in and execute on those pitches after coming in from first base, then that, you know, would have been just another way of like, hey, I wasn't loose. You chalk it up as a bad day, move on. But I was able to flip that switch to get into the zone because I've done it so many times before, and I knew I had confidence in my stuff that I was able to continue to keep focused and be able to get locked in and get the job done. Right. So essentially, that's kind of the differences that I wanted to lay out for you guys, of routines, of maybe some rituals, some superstitions. And again, we all kind of know the superstitions of maybe like not stepping on the line or not doing certain things within the game itself. I think those are seamlessly harmful, but like again, it's not the end of the world if you step on the line or if you mess something up. I'm sure the grounds crew will probably hate you for it, or some other little things there, but don't let it kill you. Don't let it get to your head where things have to be perfect in order for you to succeed, because you can still figure out a way no matter what comes across your path. And that's all I got for you guys today. Again, feel free to share the show if you know someone that needs to hear this, and stay in the zone.